Now, okay, what about mutations? All right, I'll get to that. Right here, here's an example of mutation. There's right here, this thing right here, mutation. It can still breed with other members of its own species. Mutations are how we can determine, you know, like, for instance, we decided that who Thomas Jefferson's descendants are because he carried certain mutations. I have certain mutations. I mean, the R1b shows it. One of my ancestors far, far back mutated into the R1b haplotype. And that mutation has been passed, but the mutation is still a workable gene. But what if you get a mutation like this? And again, let's consider for a minute that the letters are the genes, and the words are the chromosomes. So the genes, each letter forms a word, just like so many genes form a chromosome. In this case, this is a really bad mutation here, and this individual is no longer functional. And if it even lives, which I doubt, it will never spread its information on to the next generation. Why? Well, again, here's what I think you're taught. Let me ask you in a minute. Let's say this is an individual, and here's his genetic information here, and he's the member of the opposite sex that has the same genes. But now, let's say this one, in this case, each DNA splits in two. You know, that's part of the reproductive process. Your DNA splits in two, and the next generation will get half of your DNA, and then you mate with some member of the opposite sex, and they get half your DNA, and you have a new offspring. But now what if this one, right here, mated? Does anyone see a problem? That number two. This one could never mate, could never pass its genetic information on to the next one, because the line stops with this one. This one is so defective genetically that unless it happens to meet a member of the opposite sex nearby that has the same genetic information it has, located in the same locations, the line will come to an end with that individual. Now, is this something like what you're taught in biology class, but with a different slant? Is this what you're taught in biology class? I mean, the DNA splits in half. You get half your genetic information from your father, half from your mother. All right. Now, here's a situation where genes switched chromosomes. Now, I hope all of you know that in one species and another completely different species, like, for instance, dogs and snakes, they have genes and chromosomes, but the information for a dog might be on a different gene from the information on a snake. So here I switched the letter D from here to here, and the letter P from here to here. Now, again, I'm going to switch back. All right. Again, this gene switched chromosomes, this individual could never pass his information on next because he cannot breed with members of his own species. You know why? All the genes must all line up. The same gene from one parent line up with the same gene from another. This is true of all species of plant or animal. If they don't, you can't pass the information. Well, actually, there can't be any mating going on. And again, this was true. It has to be true. Now, this would be, and in case this one happened to meet a member of the opposite sex that had the same genetic defect that this one had. But folk, what I've got to tell you, the movement of genes from one chromosome to another has never been observed. But if evolution of Darwinian evolution were true, it had to have been. Genes have to be able to somehow move from one chromosome to another. How long would it take? Folk, it's never been observed. Now, there also, for Darwin, and again, with all due respect now, Darwin was using 1859 science. The DNA had not been discovered. It was not discovered until some 70 years after Darwin published his work. And then, even then, we did not know its role in heredity until fairly recently. You have to have new genetic information added. Folk, this has never been observed. What is observed, all that has been observed, is recombining the same genes. In other words, again, shuffle the deck. Now, but to recombine, so that's how come we get varieties of dogs. I mean, with dogs, for instance, you have poodles, you have collies, you have beagles, you have dachshunds and Great Danes. What's that mean? Recombining from the same deck. Recombining the same genes. So I had a pupil point out to me, oh, but they have discovered, a new type of bacteria that will eat nylon. Reshuffle from the same deck. And oh yes, the AIDS virus mutates every time they try to create a vaccine. Reshuffling from the same deck. They have observed for more than 10,000 generations of fruit flies, carefully documented every one of them, millions of fruit flies and who their ancestors were, and at the end of 10,000 generations, what do they get? Anybody know? In one word, what do they get? Fruit flies. They get fruit flies. Oh, they get all kinds of varieties. The point I want to make is these variations that occur in every known species are not evolution. And then sometimes people call them microevolution, but it's simply changing the variations that occur with a natural process of reproduction. The type of change from reptile to bird is theorized. Again, theoretical science, like I talked about a few minutes ago, but it has never been observed and cannot be duplicated. Never observed and cannot be replicated. So at best, it's only theoretical science. Anybody want to comment? Again, folk, if you do, I want to remind you, what I want to teach you, I do have an undergraduate minor in biology. What I want to teach here is pure science. Understood? No theology. Pure science. All right, then I'll move on. Again, genetic information, new genetic has never been observed. All has been observed, recombining the same gene. By the way, speaking of dogs, a new variety of dog comes out every year. And most of the dogs that we make from genetic manipulation are dogs that would not survive. They didn't get their food and water handed to them in either a stainless steel or plastic dish. But nevertheless, they survive because they're united with man. Movement of genes has never been observed. Oh, the changing of number of chromosomes. You may know that humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Chimpanzees have 24 pairs. But the changing of chromosome numbers never been observed, and there is a variety of slime mold. You'll see slime mold out in the woods that they thought were related. They look kind of alike, but a little bit different. Then they found out one of these slime molds had 19 pairs of chromosomes, another 13, and they thought, well, if these are related, how can one of them have 13 and one of them have 19 chromosomes? I'd suspect they're not related. And basically here is, to me, what spells the death knell to Darwin, something Darwin did not know. You cannot get a characteristic from any species that is not located in a gene pool. Just like from this deck of cards, you cannot draw an old maid card. If you did, number one, there's no rules by which it could be played. If you actually did, someone would have to have stuffed it in here because there are no old maid cards in this deck. All there are bridge cards. Again, some of you might know how to play the game, but even if you don't, I hope you get the idea. You can only get the genetic information that's in the pool. Oh yeah, here, new genetic information added to go from the tall peas or them. So here's the new genetic, the word M and peas become peanuts. Add an M here and add a nut here and you get peanuts. We're yellow and smooth. Again, this specimen, if it ever would occur, unless it met a member of the opposite sex that had the same genes located in the same location on the same chromosomes, it could never reproduce. And this is true, again, all the way up. Here's the case. I'm trying to draw something that might resemble a giraffe. Now, I want to tell you about the giraffe. He is not like any other mammal. To get from an animal with an ordinary neck, and they have one at Cincinnati Zoo that looks like a giraffe, except he has a short neck, and they say he's the ancestor. Well, he looks like one. To get from an ordinary neck to a long neck, folk, you have to have thousands upon thousands of bits of genetic information has to change. The bone structure has to change. The shoulder structure has to change. The blood vessels have to change. The nerves have to change. Now, something else about the giraffe. He's the only animal we know of alive today whose blood pressure is constant, whether he's reaching high up to eat leaves off a tree, or when he kneels, he has to get down on his knees to drink water. When he kneels down, he should die of a stroke, because he's pumping a lot of blood up, way up that long neck to the brain, and all of a sudden, he kneels down, his heart is higher than his head, and he should suffer a stroke. But he has a regulator inside his brain that keeps his blood pressure constant, whether he's stretched out or kneeling down, that no other animal has. This had to have evolved. In other words, what I'm getting at is, you can't make one change without making another change, without making another change, without making another change. This is true when you're trying to put together a better computer, better radio, or the persons who write software. If they make a change in software, they find, oops, you got to make another change here. Then you got to make another. Even women making a dress, they want to change the dress pattern a bit. Well, they have to make this change and that change. And all these changes, folk, have to occur not one at a time, all at once. All right, am I making a point? At some point, the specimen becomes so far removed from its species it can no longer breed with the members of its own, unless, again, I keep emphasizing, unless it finds a member of the opposite sex that has the same characteristics. When an individual becomes so different that it can't breed anymore with its own kind, that will be the end of the line. All right. All right, so this is something I promised the other class because they raised some issues that we might not want to deal with. Okay, the issue they raised was about the age of the earth. Hi. Which I can bring up if anyone wants to discuss it. Okay, folk, what am I saying in the long run? You, well, each of you have to make up your own mind for yourself what you think about Charles Darwin and his views. The fact that his views were misapplied really doesn't matter whether or not it's true. I mean, you know, if his views were misapplied to the death of multiplied millions of people. And Karl Marx, whom I talk about online, wound up saying, I could not have done it without Darwin. Darwin supplied the means by which I was able to come forth with my theory of communism. I needed Darwin. Again, how many of you are aware that as recently as February 4th, a debate occurred between a creationist and evolutionist?
I watched that.
You watched it, yeah. Two of you saw the debate or are aware that it happened? All right. Yeah, I watched it extensively too. And let me tell you something about the debates. 20 and 30 years ago, evolutionists would show up. By some coincidence, a higher, well-known scientist decided to show up. And to me, I mean, some of his logic was flawed. All right, here's part of his logic that he used. Our Yankee shipbuilders could not build a ship more than 150 foot long. So if our Yankee shipbuilders couldn't build a longer one, that means that Noah could not have built a 450 foot boat out of wood. The logic is flawed. The Chinese are known to have built 450 foot boats. But anyway, the point I'm making is, at some point, the evolutionists quit showing up for the debates and admitted that evolution cannot be debated. 5 years ago, Charles Darwin was born in February 12, 1809. A very famous American was born the same day. Anybody know who it was? Abraham Lincoln. All right, in 2009, we used that as an occasion to honor Darwin. And I can quote, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution said that creationists have raised some issues about evolution that cannot be answered. But then they wound up saying, we know evolution occurred, but we do not know how it could have occurred. Sounds very scientific. It occurred, but we don't know how. Again, Charles Darwin was using 1859 science. He looked at two cells like this. Let's call this a rabbit cell, and let's call this a human cell. He noticed the rabbit cell had a cell wall and a nucleus. The human cell had a cell wall and nucleus. In between was a bunch of jelly called protoplasm. He said this shows that humans and rabbits must be alike. But he was using 1859 microscopes. Does anyone see what's flawed about the logic? Anyone at all? Maybe, yeah, but don't be afraid of. I mean, you all appear to be listening, but nobody wants to speak. I can say as a plan. The rabbit is going to become a rabbit from the moment it's formed, provided it gets to live, and a human's going to become a human. They have all the differences from the moment that they're formed that they will have growing up on a DNA level. Something else about Darwin's science. He looked on one-celled animals and plants as being simple. The word simple is not used anymore. One-celled life is so extremely complex. I mean extremely complex that we can't even start to begin to duplicate it. All right, hey, now, folks, at this point, I've said about all I want to say about Darwin. I've taken, of course, I have more time with you than did the other class. Does anybody at all want to comment, probe, or con? I promise you, I've said my piece, and so unless you ask, I won't give you an argument. Anyone have any comments, pro or con?
The reason you call them simple is not because of what they're made of. Because you call them simple because they're just one cell.
Yeah.
It's complex because they're more than one cell.
But the processes that go on in that one cell are complex beyond belief.
Okay.
It has to grow, reproduce, ingest food, and respirate, give off waste.
So do we.
So do we, on a higher level. But the processes again, if these computers, if this computer were a living organism, it would be considered that it could move, reproduce, ingest food, give off waste, respirate, respond to stimuli. We have not really created a machine folk that can do that. So, can something as complex as we know a living organism is, a living substance, just happen to come together by itself? Now, given me, all right, I was reading today, given enough monkeys with enough computers, in my day we called them typewriters, let's say enough monkeys with enough computers, one of them would write Shakespeare's play, the Shakespeare play. That's a bit of logic that can't be proven. No matter how many monkeys you get in front of a computer, most of them won't write anything intelligible in any language. Maybe put a few words together here and there, but nothing really intelligible in any language. For the first living cell to have come together, folk, it wouldn't have taken, it had to come together in a split instant. And immediately, the processes would have had to have started. Why do I say that? Because if you have a living cell and a process on one, the thing will decompose. Now, at Lockheed, we put together big airplanes or even small airplanes, and how we do it, one department over here be working on the right wing, and over here another department would work on the left wing, and over here another department would work on the tail. They'd work till 4 o'clock, clock out and go home. Come in the next day and they'd continue working on the right wing. But if the airplane had been meant to be alive, they would have had to assemble all the parts in an instant and start the processes lickety split, which is impossible for humans to do.